Hi, I'm Dr. Nicole Lipkin, and this is the Hey Kiddo podcast where we talk about all things parenting. Today, I'm really excited. I'm speaking with technology and lifestyle expert Stephanie Humphrey about kids and technology and our digital footprint. Stephanie's book is Don't Let Your Digital Footprint Kick You in the Butt. And she has a signature seminar, Till Death Do You Tweet, where she helps people understand the potential negative consequences of online behavior, especially through social media. I don't think I need to stress this, but this topic is very much on every parent's mind. It's confusing, it's overwhelming, and it's really, really scary. So I am really excited to talk to you. So, Stephanie, let's get into it. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm ready to dive right
Oh,
in.
oh, this one gives me so much anxiety. So, first things first, I love the titles of your book and your seminar. What got you into this and what made you start speaking about Till Death Do You Tweet?
So I was an engineer for 13 years. I worked as that's what my background is and education. And I worked as an engineer for 13 years, but I worked for Lockheed Martin. And for
Yeah.
anybody that doesn't know, they are a government and defense contractor. So I wasn't really at liberty to discuss what I did there. But I
Yeah.
had a lot of friends that were educators and teachers and in that education space that would invite me out for career day. It was really
Yeah.
as simple as career day. Hey, come talk about being an engineer. But working at Lockheed, I really wasn't at liberty to talk about the details around what I did at work.
Yeah.
So I could talk about, what it takes to become an engineer, what kind of classes you need, and, all of that. But the conversation just wasn't that robust because I couldn't get into any of the details around what I actually did as an engineer. So I would offer my friends and, in that education space, like I can talk about how to become an engineer, what that looks like, but let's talk about social media, you know what I mean? Because I can't really speak too much to my job. But so let's talk about social media. Let's just throw something out there. This was right around 2012-ish when the networks were becoming much more popular and we were moving out of that MySpace phase into the Facebook era. So I was like, yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about kind of,
Yes.
not getting in trouble, being responsible,
Yeah.
how whatever that looks like, that's what I'll talk about because that's what they're into. That's what they're going to care about anyway. They don't really
Yeah.
care anything about me and my career journey.
Right.
Because I remember all of the career days I ever sat through as a
Don't care
child
about
and
anything.
awful, awful. Just,
Awful.
people droning on and you're like, who is this
I don't
person? Like
care.
at all, like
Yes.
literally at all. And so, I was like, well, why don't we, talk about something they actually care about and something they're actually into. And as I went on, right around 2015 or so, there was kind of this inflection point with the cyberbullying.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we were seeing a lot more, unfortunately, children taking their lives because of that. That was sort of when the proliferation of the anonymous apps really took off. I
Mhm.
know Ask.fm was really popular at that time. It still is, but that was like sort of its heyday. And there were, I think, like six documented suicides just
Mm,
as a result of children being on that app alone
mm.
that year. And so it kind of, struck me a little bit. And I'm like, and nobody's really talking about this, and nobody's really thought about, what that sort of holistic approach would be to young people to try to get them to think
Yeah.
before you post, basically. So that was kind of the light bulb moment. And I'm like, there's something here, something more than just a career day,
Mhm.
15 minutes worth of hey, don't do this on Facebook.
Yeah.
There's something else here, and there's a larger and broader conversation that needs to
Mhm.
be had with these young people about this whole online ecosystem. So I came up with the name Till Death Do You Tweet, and just started kind of soliciting principals and other folks that I knew in my area, put together sort of a presentation, if you will. It kind of works mostly assembly style. So I'll go in and, talk to the ninth graders or talk to the seniors
Yeah.
in high school. And yeah, so it's been that way ever since. And now there's a version I do for parents, and there's actually a version I do for professionals as well. But
Yeah.
my passion and the mission really lies with the students.
The students. It's great. It's great. I mean, look, this stuff is so terrifying. I am finding like I am just,
Now we get to add AI to the mix.
well,
Woo-hoo.
I go into that death spiral when I start to think about AI 2 years from now, or my
Yeah,
kid get like my kid
6 months from now.
months
Honestly,
from
it's
now.
insane.
So let's talk about this from a parenting angle because it is freaking me out. So in
Yeah.
your experience, like what are the biggest tech traps that parents fall into when it comes to their kids? Like how should we be thinking about this?
I think the biggest one is thinking that they have it figured out. I think a
That
lot of
we have it
parents,
figured out as parents.
yeah. No,
So,
that the kids have it figured out.
oh, okay.
I think we give them those devices, and especially for parents that would classify themselves as especially not tech savvy, I think we give these kids these devices, and because they're so good at them, and because we've made up this term digital native to describe them, we think that they know what they're doing. And I think that's a very dangerous assumption, to just think that, oh, they're on TikTok. They do that all the time. They're always on their phone. They know. I mean, honestly, it irks my soul really to talk to parents that
Mm,
are so incredibly and dangerously hands off when it
mm,
comes to understanding what their kids are doing on their devices. I mean, honestly, they like some, and I get it in a sense, because it is overwhelming. I honestly get it. I do
yeah,
this for a living and it's overwhelming to me, but you cannot take that approach with your kids and their devices. You cannot just hand them that phone and
yeah.
that's the end of the conversation. You know what I
What do
mean?
you do? What do you do? Like when should you do the device? Like I have a million questions.
Yeah, yeah. That one, I get that question all the time. When is the best time for a kid to honestly, that is a personal decision. I'm not going to tell a parent what to do. I'm going to say, your kid. If you have a kid that continues to, like, every day for the first semester of the school year forgets the shoes that they need for basketball practice, they probably aren't responsible enough to have a phone. You know what I mean? If you have a kid that, but if you have a kid that's a straight A student on student council and and you know that that kid is focused, maybe they can handle the responsibility of a phone. You know what I mean? So you have to
Right.
assess your own, kid. I mean, I personally, I don't have any kids, full disclosure, but I've spoken to enough and enough parents that I think I have a little bit of insight on this. If I did have a kid, I probably they would probably only have a flip phone until at least 13. At least. I would not give a preteen or a 10-year-old a smartphone.
Right.
I just wouldn't. They would have a flip phone for emergencies if they needed to reach me, and that would pretty much be the gist of what they could do on that phone. After that, now we got to get into the conversation and the negotiation, because I still wouldn't let them on social media at 13. Technically they're not even supposed to be on there, based on the platform's terms of service, but that's a whole nother conversation as well. It would probably be around 15 or 16 when I'd
Yeah.
let them get on social media.
Yeah. That my husband and I talk about this a lot. I don't want Charlie. A flip phone's fine.
Mhm.
16, maybe.
Maybe.
Oh, maybe a smartphone. Like I am freaked out. But then there's the whole thing about like being the weird kid with not having the technology. Like, it
Listen,
feels like it has to be a
they'll live. They'll live. And
parent.
the other thing about that, which is interesting, I was in Indiana about 2 weeks ago speaking to students, and
Mhm.
then I had a session in the evening for the parents. And one of the parents brought their kids back with them. The young people, the students that had seen me speak during the day, they brought them back to the evening session. And the one of the young ladies, she said, she's like, listen, we're going to figure out how to get on this technology, like whether it's our phone or our friend's
Someone else.
phone or the computer at school or the tablet they issue, regardless, we are going to find a way to do this. So the idea, I think that's the like a really key takeaway. Like, you're not going to keep your kid from being exposed to this stuff. You can limit it again by getting them a flip phone. So now they don't have that issue where they're up all night, texting and doing
Mhm.
that. So they're getting a good night's sleep and all those different things. So you can mitigate as much as you can, but you are not going to prevent them from
Right. So then what should you
experiencing the
do? So
internet.
then what do you do? What do you do
So
starting at like a super early age and then later
you
ages?
got to start having that conversation early. You got to use age appropriate language to talk about some of the kinds of things that are happening online. You got to show them, like, it I think one of the most impactful parts of my presentation are the videos. So there are about three different places in the presentation where I show them news clips
Mm.
of the what I'm talking about, because I'm like, you don't have to take my word for it. I can stand here all day and tell you this happened or this could happen or there's the potential for this to happen, but here's where it's happening and here's where it's happened. So, if you come across something, sit down with your child and say, look at what happened when this student was extorted because they sent a nude photo to someone
Mm.
and they demanded money, and that student got scared and unfortunately killed themselves. Like I have that news story in my presentation of a student that happened
Right.
to. So when you see those things, and you have to take sort of an active, proactive, I think is the word I'm looking for,
Yeah.
role in that. So you have to be seeking that kind of thing out. When they're younger, it can just start with like internet safety and talking about the idea of, stranger danger. You have that conversation anyway, but let's talk about stranger danger online, because everybody online, if you see a stranger in real life, it's a grown up, and you're not supposed to talk to grown ups when you see them in real life. But on the internet, you're not always going to know who's a grown up and who's not. So
Right.
this is why we got to be a little bit more careful when we're on these platforms, because somebody might reach out to you that tells you they're your age, but they're not. So if that ever
Right.
happens, if you're ever approached by somebody you don't know, you can come talk to me. You can always come talk to me about that, but you really need to be thinking about that. And so that sort of messaging starts to
Hmm.
get, imbued early and reinforced and talked about over and over again. And then as they move along through, their age and the teen years, and now we're looking at colleges, hey, did you see that story about that kid that lost their scholarship because of da 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 da? You know what I mean? So you're using what's happening online to help them understand what could potentially happen to them.
Right. It's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're talking about the like the conversation, the age appropriate conversation. So
Hmm.
internet safety for youngins, like probably you're suggesting like tween years you start upping
Yeah.
the ante a little bit with the stories.
Yeah.
And then teenagers, you can hear
Yeah.
it. You can handle it. If you're going to be on
Yes.
this, you can handle it.
Yeah.
Do you feel there's any what's your take on video games?
It's
Ah.
it's tough because I mean, kids are getting esports scholarships now to go to college, so you wouldn't want to limit their participation in that if it was something that you saw that they were into, and maybe they have shown a propensity for building their own video games or coding or anything like that. I will say about video games what I'll say about the tech in general, and a lot of parents don't want to hear this either, but you are going to have to learn. It like, if you're letting your kid play video games, maybe they don't stream. Your mind would be blown by how many parents I've spoken to that don't know what Twitch is, like have never heard of Twitch. And that's the most popular streaming platform for anybody that's a gamer. That's the
Mm,
most popular platform for that in the world. If your kid loves video games, they know what Twitch is, and they're probably on there to maybe their detriment, honestly, depending on the age of the child.
mm. I don't
Um,
know what Twitch is, but my kid's 6, so I
but
haven't gotten
fine,
it
but
yet,
listen, because the
but I'm gonna
people,
get
if
it.
if they're playing, if your kid's playing Roblox or Minecraft, there's probably somebody on Twitch streaming Roblox or Minecraft. So,
Mm,
you have
get to
it's
learn.
yeah, you have to learn. And so if your kid's on TikTok, you should not be on TikTok. You don't have to make any videos. You don't have to, do anything, but you should have an account and you should be following your kid on TikTok if
To
they're
watch
on
them.
there, and you should understand how to go into those settings and put whatever. And again, nothing is going to be foolproof, but you should at least have that understanding of how to go in there, set those parental controls, have that conversation with your
Yeah.
kid. Listen, I'm going to set this so that you got to, I get notified if you do X, Y, and Z. None of this should be happening in the dark. Everybody should know what the expectations are around the digital use in your house, but you have to get smart about
Yeah.
what is happening. It's just one more thing, you know what I mean? Like, I hate that I always tell parents I hate it because I feel like I'm like adding this next like brick to the burden of what it means to be a parent, but here we
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah, but you know what? You're giving me an idea right now, kind of with Hey Kiddo and in how it coaches parents, that it would probably be helpful to have a description of what all these things are. Like
Yeah.
that's actually a great
Yep.
and what the age appropriateness is. That's actually a great point that you're
Mm-hmm.
making. One of the things that it's interesting that I've noticed when you're saying like you know your kid best, you have to educate yourself. When I see Charlie with technology,
Mm-hmm.
versus and I see kids like him and I see kids that are not like him. The zombie-like
Yeah.
face,
Yeah.
and it is so scary to me,
Yeah. Yeah.
where I don't always see that in other kids when they're on. And I sometimes think, is it because we're kind of limiting so much and maybe
So he's
depriving?
getting inundated in the moments when he is able to get
Right.
on.
I've been curious, like, what are your thoughts on that when parenting young kids around technology use? Because,
That screen time thing. Yeah, screen time's a big deal, and you really got to keep your eye. I mean, like the Surgeon General's put out warnings, and the book The Anxious Generation is blowing up all over the place. You got to keep an eye on that. And I think that is one of the bigger issues with young people, in addition to what they can potentially encounter when they get online. Just the amount of time they're spending is a huge issue. So, you know, we got to keep our eyes on that as well. And the understanding needs to be you get 30 minutes and that's it. You know what I mean? Or maybe you
yeah,
can do a little bit of extra chores and get some extra, whatever that looks like for you and whatever you think your child will respond to the best. But
right.
there definitely needs to be some limits. I mean, I think the average right now is over 6 hours a day that kids are spending online. And that is kind of the totality of their online use. So it could be for school, it could be for whatever, but that's still a lot of time
Yes.
and a lot
A
of
lot.
hours in the day. So, it is really, really incumbent upon parents to kind of pay attention to that and get your kids engaged in some other stuff. Like, listen, if you want this phone time, we need a hour of piano lessons or basketball practice or something
Right.
else to get their mind engaged in a different way.
Okay, so it is a little bit of negotiating, like
Absolutely.
and earning.
Absolutely.
'Cause
Absolutely.
it's interesting. I think when you even think about adults and technology, when I think about myself, if you think about yourself, like and where I get very anxious for our society is the
Mhm.
decline in emotional intelligence from technology. Like it's
It
hard to
removes
talk
all of
to
that.
people.
Yeah, it removes all of that.
Yeah.
There's a concept. A woman named Dana Boyd wrote a book called It's Complicated, and she has like these kind of five concepts about the behavior of the internet. And one of them is, I don't, maybe that wasn't her that came up, but I can't remember who came, but
Mhm.
it's the concept of perceived anonymity
Mm.
and the fact that people act differently
Right.
when they don't think that you're going to find out who they are, and maybe act in ways that they would never act in person, when you don't think you're going to find out who they are. We don't necessarily have that these days. I don't know that adults understand that well enough
Yeah.
that we will find out. There is no anonymity online or in real life. And I think when it comes to young people, I'll tell you what's worked for me.
Please. Please.
What, because when I first started doing Tell Death You Tweed, it was really, like I said, the cautionary tale. Look what happened. Look what could happen. Don't do this, don't do that. It was very much something a parent might say to a kid, and it did not resonate at all. It teachers still brought me in because they knew that it was important information, but the message was not hitting the students at all. It was not resonating at all. When I added in the conversation around personal brand,
Okay.
changed the game completely. Change like the whole first third of my presentation. So it's broken up into about thirds. The
Mm-hmm.
whole first third is around your personal brand. We don't even talk about the internet in that part of it. I literally, when I first get there, as the students are walking in, like, and taking their seats, I start walking around the room and start shaking hands and introducing myself.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't know how to do a proper handshake, I'll correct it. I'll say, "Hey, I need you to look me in the eye. I know kids have anxiety these days, but this is like basic human interaction
Mm-hmm.
that some of them just don't know."
Yeah.
And so I start, and I'm like, and I tell them, I'm like, we're going to talk about why this is important. I need a firm handshake, two pumps, look me in the eye, speak up when you tell me your name, like that whole thing. Like I do that with, maybe 30 or 40 students right at the beginning before we even get
Mm-hmm.
started. So now they've seen me do that. Even if I didn't shake your hand, you saw me walking around shaking hands. You're like, what's she doing shaking hands? Why is she shaking hands?
Yeah.
I want, and it's funny because when they see me doing it
Right.
now, they all want me to shake their hand, and students are running to me and they're, hey, shake my hand, so now we get into that whole thing. So that establishes a little
Yeah.
familiarity as well. But when we get into the conversation about personal brand, we talk about how it gets represented. So the first way is in person. I said, you got about a second to make a good impression on somebody. And when I went around shaking hands, some of y'all didn't make the best impression. So we
Mm-hmm.
got to learn from that. The second way is in writing.
Mm-hmm.
Is your homework legible? Can I read it? Is it grammatically correct? Did you run a spell check? Did you do all of those different things? This makes a difference. The
Mm-hmm.
third way is by other people. How other people perceive us becomes a part of our brand if we're not careful. And it may not necessarily be correct or true, but if everybody else thinks you're something, you're probably that thing, or at least in their minds,
Yeah.
you're going to be that thing. And then we talk about the fourth way, which is online, because that's the quickest way to kind of build a brand, but also the quickest way to kind of destroy your brand.
Yeah.
It only takes
Yeah.
one post. So once that's been established, and that ownership has been established, because it's like, listen, whether you've thought about it before today or not, I know you're only 13, but guess what? By virtue of you creating a digital footprint, you've created a brand for yourself.
Yep.
And, by virtue of how you move in the world, what other people know of you, what other people think about you, how you present yourself, how you write, you've created a brand for yourself
Yep.
already, even now. And it belongs to you. You're responsible for it. You don't have to do anything at all to try to make it one way
Yeah.
or the other, but you do have this thing. So, how are you going to manage it?
Yes.
Then we get into the conversation about, let's see what happens if you're not necessarily managing your brand in the best way. But we also talk about how you can manage your brand in the best way online. And those
Yeah.
conversations are about online behavior. And I'm telling you, I got a text from a young woman. It was a while ago,
Yeah.
but she just tweeted something and she was like, I learned about brands from Tech Life Steph, and 4 years later, I'm finally proud of mine.
It's
Like
incredible.
literally, a friend of mine who is she's a head of middle school in North Carolina. She was the head of school up here in Pennsylvania when I came and spoke to her middle school, and her son was in that class. She said to this day, and this is easily 5 years, she's like, my son still talks about his brand and what he got to do about his brand. And oh my God, his
Uh,
brand, my brand. Oh my, I can't mess up my brand. Like they truly, truly resonate with that. They eat that up. And again,
uh,
it gives them the ownership. It gives them something they can
they
control
can
because
control.
you have complete control over this. You
Sure.
know what I mean? Like, and it's all based on how you choose
Yep.
to present yourself online. Are you being intentional about what you're doing on the internet? Are you being mindful about why you need to post this thing versus, maybe not saying anything at all? And it literally changed the conversation that I have with students completely. Like
I
100.
love this because I also think it can change the parenting conversation because
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting that the don't do this, look what's going to happen to you.
Yeah, that's not gonna work.
That's also what doesn't resonate with our kids either. It doesn't
Mm-mm.
resonate when
Mm-mm.
we're
They don't
parents.
want to hear that. They don't want to
No,
hear
it's
that.
annoying.
No.
It's naggy. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, and it's interesting starting from, again, that kind of language, I can imagine resonating really well from middle school up. Like,
Yes.
yes. And younger kids, I think also connecting, being very intentional about helping kids, having kids talk about, like, okay, when you were mean, how did it feel?
Yeah.
Do you like that feeling? Did you not like that feeling?
Absolutely.
Or when you tease someone or someone teased, like, how did it feel?
Absolutely.
That, I
Absolutely.
think rather than that's bad, that starts to get them connected to
Mm-hmm.
how it feels to be thought of in a positive light
That's right.
or a bad light. And I think
That's
that's,
right.
or not so good feeling light. And I think that's probably the progression with young to older.
Yes. Yes.
Um, I also
Absolutely.
think, I don't know what you think about this. I also think for younger kids, there can be a connection when you're giving screen time about, I noticed that when we take away, when Charlie does have screen time, and we give him screen time, like it's a very helpful parent, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a very helpful third parent. But I notice like if it's gone above and beyond what he should have,
Mm-hmm.
he melts down.
Yeah.
He doesn't feel good. And I think there could be something about connecting that with his emotional response when he's ready to
Right.
talk about that. Like it doesn't feel good when you've had too much. Like it doesn't feel good for
When
us.
it's too much, yeah, like you can, and you're allowed to put it down. Like you can put the tab down, and here's a book. Let me know when you get done with the chapter and we can talk about the chapter. Or maybe you don't want to necessarily reward children for reading, but
Yes.
whatever sort of incentive they can have to do that instead
Yeah.
of,
Instead.
you put those things in place as well. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love focusing on the brand and like across the ages, what you can
Oh
do.
my gosh, they get invested. When I tell you
Awesome.
they get it's funny at the end. I always tell them, because we talk about like kind of what you should be thinking about as you're presenting your brand online, and we talk about on social media, profile picture, bio, username. Because when I tell you, I have heard some egregious usernames and have seen some photos as your I'm like, are you serious with this right now? Like, does your mother know you have this? So and I always say I'll stay after we're done and do some audits. And there's usually a line. They all want
Incredible.
to look, is mine okay? Is my brand okay? Does this look okay? Should I change this? And I'm like, and I might go around, as I'm doing it and ask, hey, what's your Instagram username? And if you're too embarrassed to tell me
It's
and
not
say it
correct.
out loud to the class, that probably means you need to change it.
That's a great point. Such a great point. I love this. And so you were saying it's that first impression, the eye contact, the
Hmm.
handshake, the how you're holding yourself.
Yep.
The second was what
In writing.
in writing. The
Hmm.
third is what other people say about you, and
Yep.
the fourth is online. And
Is
your
online.
username matters, your profile picture, what you write about yourself, and
All of that.
so every single post, and also everything you respond to, right?
Well, and understanding the concept of digital footprint. That's the thing. People think that all of this is just social media contained, and it's not.
Wow.
It's email, it's group chat, that group chat that you're in the text thread and you're going back and forth in the group chat. All somebody needs to do is screenshot that or forward a message to someone else.
Right.
It's Google searches, it's it's
Oh.
everything. It's I tell people your digital footprint is any and all of your electronically connected activity.
Oh,
And it is all fair game.
I miss
It
the 1980s so much.
Yeah. Mhm.
I miss the
I know, right?
1980s
When we
so
didn't have to
much.
think about any of this stuff, but it is
Oh,
literally any and because any of that can be used to
harm
implicate you
you.
in
Yeah.
something, to condemn you, it all becomes a part of your personal brand. It's all a thing. I give examples about there was unfortunately a situation at Penn State a few years back where one of the pledges of a fraternity ended up dying because he drank too much, and I think he
Mm.
fell down some steps and
Oh,
hit his head, and they picked him up and put him on a couch and kind of left him there like, I think he'll be all right, whatever. But in the meantime, as no one was actually checking on him to make sure he was okay, they were Googling, what do you do when a 200-pound man has a head injury? You know what I mean? So when they got arrested, that was admissible in court. They and their group chat, as because they were in the group chat. Hey, did anybody check on him? What does he look like? Is he
oh,
moving? Is he doing? So all of that stuff now is attached to you and can be used against you.
against
So
you.
you got to be thinking again, there's a mindfulness and an intention that you have to approach your digital usage with all the time. I know we think these platforms are just for fun and this is our entertainment and this and a lot of people are making their living now as content creators, and I get that, but we always have to be thinking about mindfulness and intention as we
Love it.
approach these digital platforms.
Oh, God, it's so much. And you can't, I want to move into something that is also very terrifying, which is cyberbullying. But before we go there, I think, what you just said resonated so much because it's like when it's our we can't fight biology.
Right.
Like it is more powerful than our self-control.
Yeah,
I think this is what is so concerning is that addiction to it, that
yeah,
whatever, that loop to it. Like it is more powerful. And and I think as parents, as citizens, as human beings, we got to figure this out. One of the things
we
that's
do.
making me so happy is some of the schools starting to ban.
Yeah,
phones.
honestly,
Like,
I'm for that
do it,
any
do it,
circumstances, honestly.
do it.
I do not believe, and I mean, I understand, unfortunately we live in a society where school shootings are a thing, and you want to be able to get in touch with your kid or have them be able to get in touch with you, but I cannot think of any legitimate reason you need a phone in a classroom. A student would need a phone in a classroom. Honestly, I can't think of one. I
Like,
and I
can't there
I'd
be
be I'd
like,
be open to hearing any suggestions from your listeners, but I cannot think of one legitimate reason. I mean, you can always go to that worst case scenario, but I can't think of any other legitimate reason a kid would need a cell phone in a classroom.
okay, cyberbullying.
Yeah.
Oof.
And it's unfortunate that the parents who haven't had a child go through it tend to trivialize it a little bit. And I tell parents all the time, when I was in Idaho probably back in 2023,
Hmm.
and I did 4 schools in 3 days. And out of those 4 schools, I think I had 9 students. Because someone always, I've never not had a kid come up to me afterwards and tell me either they had been bullied or they had tried to kill themselves. In Idaho, between those 4 schools, I had 9 students that did that. I had never had that many. It was shocking even to me
Mm.
that it was that many, but there's never not been an occasion, and I've been doing this since 2012. There's never not been an occasion where a student hasn't come up to me afterward and said, I've been bullied. I've thought about killing myself. Thank you for shining a light on this and letting other students know that it's not okay. There's never not been a time. There's never not been a time.
Devastating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Devastating. Oh, what do you do as a parent? Like, what are the, I don't know if you, like, what are the signs? Like, what do you do here?
It's tough. It's tough. I mean, you want to look for changed behavior,
Yeah.
obviously, either, especially with device use.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had a student that kind of was always on their phone and you were always trying to get them off their phone, but now you haven't seen them touch their phone in 2 days, or they weren't the most phone heavy user, but now they're always on their phone, because sometimes you get in that feedback loop too, right, where you're absorbing all of the negative
All of it.
comments, and
Mm-hmm.
you can't stop yourself
Yeah.
from wanting to see. So look for that change behavior, especially around the device use,
Mm-hmm.
because that's kind of a telltale sign of, and like if the eating habits get different, sleeping habits
There's
get
sudden
different.
change of behavior or
Yeah,
prolonged.
yeah, you're looking for those behavior changes, definitely. Unfortunately, sometimes you just won't know until it's too late, but you just got to be very, very vigilant. I will say there is a tool, because parents are always looking for kind of that silver bullet, and I'm like, there is no one silver bullet, but I will say Bark as
Mm.
monitoring software. And again, this is a conversation you have with your child. Listen, I'm gonna put this on your phone for now because I just want to make sure I can keep an eye on what you're doing. And
Yeah.
it's not gonna be, you kind of negotiate that. Again, it's always about the conversation. But
Yes.
I will say Bark in particular, because that's looking through, again, more of your digital footprint than just your emails. It's looking, I mean, than just your social media. It is looking at emails. It is looking at group texts and text messages,
Great.
but it also is looking for specific examples of suicidal ideation. Like, it's actually
Fantastic.
looking for that. And if there seems to be, like, well, that the tone of that message seemed a little bit depressing or depressive or something like that. So it's looking for that kind of thing, in addition to being able to monitor what websites they're visiting and how much time they spend online and things like that. It's actually looking for that. So if you think that that might be an issue,
Yeah.
with your kid, it could help. It could
Yeah.
help,
And
but
I
it's
just
tough.
like, I have to say this as a psychologist, like when it comes to this kind of stuff, any gut feeling, like
Yeah.
it's like they're like, even if your kid's going to be totally pissed off at you
So
and
what?
not
Yeah.
talk to you,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Anything you're seeing, like this is the thing to react to and
Yeah.
not worry about overreacting. I mean, you don't want to,
Absolutely.
but just if you have something, if you're seeing something, say something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, having that conversation before it gets to that point,
Of
like
course.
this should have been something, especially with things
Yeah.
like because sextortion is huge right now with
Hmm.
young boys, especially.
Talk to
That's
me about that.
when they get approached online by someone they think is their age, by
Hmm.
someone they think is a young girl or a young boy, depending on, but they get approached and they get asked to send a photo, and they may even have gotten a photo, first from somebody that they thought was somebody they were interested in. And then it flips, and this person is now saying, hey, we got your picture. We are going to expose it to everybody if you don't give us XYZ. That is one of the biggest sort of scams for young teenage boys today. And so, it's not necessarily cyberbullying per se. I guess it is a form of bullying, but all of those scenarios, if you will, need to be discussed so that your kids recognize them when they're happening, and they know that they can come to you and talk about it when it's
Yeah.
happening. Because I guarantee you, if that one student in the news clip that I show felt like, I'm going to be a little bit embarrassed, but I need to tell my mom that this guy has or these people have my picture, maybe a tragedy could have been avoided. You know what I mean?
Um,
And I don't knock that mom, because you don't even know a thing like
no,
that is
no.
possible. You don't even know a thing like that can happen. You know what I mean? But again, as you're moving sort of through the internet, and as you're watching the news, and you're like, you're gonna have to maybe take some time every week, take an hour on Sundays to just look for those types of stories. Look around on the internet for, what are kids doing these days? How are kids getting in trouble? Ask Chat GPT, you know what I mean? And
Right.
like ask for sort of a summary of 10 different articles where students have gotten into some sort of trouble because of social media, or
Right.
because of what, like, you can start curating that content now, and just having it in your back pocket so you can spark that conversation later on.
Oh, it's a lot.
It's
It's
a lot.
it's a
it's
lot.
it's
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 a lot.
a lot.
But I think one of the things
So
I'm also
much.
hearing is one of the biggest messages I'm hearing you say is it is our job as parents to be extremely informed and ahead of the curve
Yeah.
on what's
That
going on
that's the
and what
thing. And
kids
and
get
it's
in
it's
trouble.
it's honestly like, Sisyphus, you're pushing that rock up the hill, and
There's
it's
always something else.
rolling right back down. Yeah. And there's always going to be something. And I talk to parents though too. I tell them, because they're always like, well, what platforms should we avoid? What should he be on, here or there? The technology almost doesn't even matter. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's always going to be something.
It's
It's
our
always going to be,
behavior on it.
the risks associated across platforms are very similar.
Mhm.
There's no one platform that is quote unquote safer than another platform, honestly.
Mhm.
They all, jeopardize your privacy. They
Yeah.
all, allow strangers to contact your kids. They all allow for bullying to happen. They all do all of these things. So the technology is not really the issue. It's the understanding of what could potentially happen.
Right. It's
And
our
just,
behavior.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and just stressing that, and again, helping your young person understand that mindfulness and that intention. And,
Exactly.
to go back to the cyberbullying, you know, I I don't I will say harsh, but I'm very real with the students I speak to. I
Good.
I do not sugarcoat a whole lot for them. Like I said, it's age appropriate, but I don't sugarcoat things for them. So when we get to that cyberbullying piece, I ask them, are you willing to have your post potentially be the last post that somebody else sees?
Hmm.
Because you commented and said, ha ha ha, or, oh wow, you look awful in that, or, oh,
Oh,
like that student could have been dealing with that all day. They were up all night
yep.
just reading negative comments on that particular picture all night long, just negative, negative, negative. And then they finally get to your comment. And that's the comment that they're like, you know what? I can't take this.
Fun. Yeah.
Because this is where we are. Like, I don't feel like I have the luxury to sugarcoat that conversation for
There
them.
is no luxury. There,
No,
you
we don't
can't.
have that luxury. Like,
You
I've seen
can't.
it way too many times to be like, well, be nice to your fel. No. Are you prepared
Yep.
to have your post
Be the last
be
one.
the last post that somebody else sees?
Yep.
That is how serious this situation
Yep.
is. That's it.
Yep. That's it.
And
That's
and
it.
and I believe that, because there's some news stories in there as well, again, of bullying,
Of
and so
course.
I believe that combination of things can help
Mhm.
Kids be a little bit more mindful about that.
I think
I believe it. I believe it with my whole heart.
I believe it with my whole heart too. And I also believe you also have to start young.
Yes.
Again,
Yes.
your kids aren't posting on posts at 5 years old. But at 5 years old, they might hit someone else or go nanny nanny poo poo or things
Yep.
like that. And that's
Yep.
where that has to start. It has to.
That's right. That's right. Empathy
Oh,
is taught,
yeah.
and if you get to 15 without anybody ever saying, "Hey, you have a responsibility for your fellow man," like,
Yep.
absolutely, then I'm going to be the one to tell you.
Good.
And I
I'm
don't have a
glad you
problem doing
are.
that. Yeah, I don't have a problem doing that at all.
And look, we have to save this for another day, but we haven't even opened up the conversation of AI.
Oh my gosh.
And
The
also,
misinformation, the disinformation, the
yeah,
media literacy.
the way AI is designed is to make you it is to make you feel good. And
Mhm.
make you feel like relationships, love, like all
Yep.
of that, and what will come of
Yep.
kids whose brains are not formed yet. And like you think about like your high school loves, right?
Mhm.
And the crushingness you felt and bring it to AI. Like I can't even go there.
There's already an example in my parent presentation about a student that unfortunately killed himself because he fell in love with a
Yeah.
chatbot.
Yep.
And the
I heard that story.
chatbot sort of led him to believe. I don't think the chatbot explicitly said you should kill yourself, but the chatbot led him to believe that the only way for them to be together, quote unquote, together. So he extrapolated that himself and decided that that was the way that they could be together. And it's only going to get worse.
It's only gonna get worse.
Especially, and I know we're not getting into this conversation, but I just had a conversation on my podcast yesterday about the fact that in the current budget bill for our administration, that just passed the House like 2 days ago and is going to the Senate now as we speak, there's a provision in that bill that prohibits states from regulating AI for 10 years.
Oh, wait, I signed the thing against that.
Yes.
Ah, it went through.
No, it passed the House. It hasn't passed the Senate yet. And it hasn't made it to the president's desk yet. So we need everybody to like,
Scream.
yes, and tell your representatives at least at a minimum take that piece out. Take
Scream.
that piece out. There's no way because the justification is that the federal government is claiming they want to empower smaller AI companies to not have to navigate
No,
50 different systems from 50
no.
different states, and they're claiming that they will have federal legislation that will encompass what it needs to. We know that's not true. We don't have federal legislation to monitor the internet and social media currently. So now you're going to all of a sudden quickly get some AI legislation up and running. It's not going to happen. So we need that provision struck out of the current bill.
Oh man.
Because if that's the case, we're all gonna be in trouble because the level of realism that video generation and
Sure.
now it's already to where you can't believe your eyes, and it's only gonna get better.
Right.
It's
No, I've
only
heard
gonna
the
get
stories
better.
of like people calling on FaceTime and it being a generated video. It's not real.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to have you back to talk about that.
Yes,
Do
definitely.
me this favor. I want you, what are your top five takeaways that you
Top
want
five
parents to walk
takeaways.
away with?
Number one, your kids need your help. Like, don't bury your head. You cannot bury your head in the sand. You cannot use the excuse that I'm not a techie. I'm not techie. I don't know how to. That's not going to fly anymore. Your kids actually do need your help. They know all of the how. They can edit a TikTok video with the best of them, but they don't know the why of what their behavior could produce. So they
Yep.
do need your help. There is no silver bullet. There is no one app or one monitoring software or one restriction you can give them. And that's honestly not going to help anyway, because they're going to figure out ways around things no matter what. The conversation is the most important thing. It has to start early and it has to happen often. You have to get them involved in that conversation about how digital usage in your house is going to go. And you have to model the good behavior. You got to be the change you want to see. You can't be that parent on your phone all day long and then telling them, get off your phone. Why do you spend so much time on your phone? Put your phone down. You know what I mean? You can't, it can't be a do as I say, not as I do kind of proposition. So you have to model the good behavior, and everybody needs to get outside and touch some grass every once in a while.
Like what?
Go outside.
Stephanie, go outside. Stephanie, you are incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your insights on the show.
This has been a pleasure. I love the conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Hey Kiddo. If you like what you hear, give us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Learn more about Hey Kiddo at our website, hey-kiddo.com. Have a question for our experts? Email us at hello@hey-kiddo.com.